So I guess the first one I wanted to kind of mention today about a woman who was first in my research area. So I'm an evolutionary psychologist. So the lady in the middle there was, I guess, the co-founder of evolutionary psychology. Obviously, there was antecedents to evolutionary psychology before 1992, which was when they kind of put the cap on that. Evolutionary psychology almost sort of rebranded evolutionary psychology in that sense. Leda Cosmides and her husband as well, who was an anthropologist. But evolutionary psychology is often seen as something. It's often seen as sexist, I guess. And I guess from, if you look at it from on the surface, it does seem to be very sexist, but it's not once you kind of look into it, and once you get to grips with how it works and the assumptions that's being made and everything. It's not actually a sexist discipline. So I thought it was really cool that the founder of that discipline was a woman. She completed her undergraduate degree in America in the 70s. So I guess quite a difficult time, I guess, for someone coming through education at that time. She did her PhD in the 80s. She had a really good mentor, but again, that mentor was a man who was somebody who was he is very prolific in evolutionary psychology, Robert Trivers. But then leading on from that was this lady over here, the one that's not me and Helen Driscoll, who's Anne Campbell, and she was Helen Driscoll's PhD supervisor at Durham. Anne, who is also an evolutionary psychologist, really kind of turned up the heat on the fact that women aren't this kind of passive, they don't occupy this passive place in evolutionary psychology. So as I say, a lot of people consider evolutionary psychology to be quite sexist and downplaying the role of women, and to be kind of putting women into these little boxes of, they're just there to have children and to be passive, and they don't contribute to anything, and everything's all about men. And like I say, that's not the case, but Anne Campbell really kind of ramped that up, and showed how, biological exuberance. Do you have my book, Richard? Do you? She really showed that, a lot of people talk about women being not aggressive and passive, but she really showed how women are aggressive and absolutely not passive. They take a very active role in everything to do with, everything that we talk about from an evolutionary perspective. So on the surface, people see it as, oh, this is something that's driven by men and things like that. And it's just, actually it's saying that women are what's driving everything that we see. I guess the idea really is that, it's going to sound horrible again, but the women almost have men wrapped around their fingers, in a sense, that women are the ones kind of orchestrating things. So that women play a much more active role than you might expect. And obviously leading on from that, as I say, she was Helen Driscoll's PhD supervisor, and Helen Driscoll's someone who's always been very inspirational and supportive for me. So I did my undergraduate degree here many moons ago, and I also did my PhD here. And my PhD supervisor left when I was just 2 years part-time, I think, into my PhD, and Helen stepped up to take over that supervision. And she hadn't actually long been through her PhD herself at that point, because she got her job here while she was still doing her PhD. She took on senior lecturer responsibilities while she was still doing her PhD, and she's always really supported us in everything that I've done, and been really inspirational, because she comes from the same town that I do. That she went to school in that town, so she had a husband and children when she was doing her PhD as well, just like I did. So So she's been someone who's always been really supportive and inspirational for me. And in terms of my own personal achievement, I think probably the one I was going to mention today was that I created a male psychology module that I have ran for the first time this year, and we think it's the first one in the world. We know that there's a lot of gender studies modules, but because I'm an evolutionary psychology, I do incorporate the biological components into that, and we do talk about how, you know, the focus of the module, it's only a little 10 credit module, it's only a little option module, but the focus of it has to be necessarily very narrow. But it does have wider implications, so it's not at the exclusion of women, it's not at the exclusion of trans people. It can be applied in all these different areas, but I get really, I guess, stubborn. You know, Vanessa mentioned stubborn at the beginning, and I just think it's the only thing that I can use to kind of describe myself in anything that I've done, anything that I've achieved. It's all about stubbornness, for me. And I don't want it to be the case of, but what about women, or but what about men? It's that, you know, we've got to embrace our differences. Otherwise, you know, to ignore any differences, even if they are slight, we do just become this kind of homogenous blob of sameness. And, you know, looking at male psychology is one part of the human condition, and it is relevant and it is valid, just as looking at women's psychology is, you know, the women's psychology section of the British Psychological Society was created a long time ago. I think in the 80s or possibly the 90s. The male psychology section was only something that was approved a couple of years ago, and it was after a lot of opposition, and it's something that seems politically very sensitive. I personally don't fully understand why it has to be so politically very sensitive, but I do get a lot of grief on things like Twitter for it. It did used to bother us, but I guess not so much anymore. It comes from a place of hurt, I think. I don't know, but yeah. So the male psychology module went really well, and the students were wonderful. They were very supportive. Everybody passed. The highest grade was 90%, which was lovely. And the feedback that I've seen so far, the qualitative feedback that I've had was about how it was eye-opening. And people hadn't considered issues that face men and boys as different to issues that face women and girls, or as some of the same issues, but maybe it's affecting people in different ways. So, for example, you know, for a long time we considered that men couldn't be victims of sexual assault, they couldn't be victims of rape, they couldn't be victims of domestic violence or domestic abuse. And we know that actually women, you know, perpetrate this 50-50 pretty much. So it was just kind of highlighting some of those issues, and it seems to have gone really well. So those are some of my firsts and some of my inspirational women.
Thank you very much.
Rebecca.